The hook opening scene, it was late evening, and the small apartment was quiet. The man sat on his old sofa, staring at the woman in front of him. She was kneeling on the floor, her hands pressed together like she was praying. Her long black hair fell over her face, but he could still see her eyes. They were filled with fear, and something else. "Please," she whispered. "Please marry me." The man blinked. This had to be a dream. He didn't even know this woman's name, at least, not until a few days ago. And now, here she was, begging him for marriage like her life depended on it. Behind her, little girl stood quietly, clutching the woman's dress. She looked up at the man with big brown eyes. It's the same little girl he had found crying in the street just nights before. His mind raced. How had things turned so strange so fast? Just days ago, he was living a normal life. Now, there was talk of danger, strange glowing marks, and creatures he couldn't explain. He leaned back, trying to breathe, but the memory hit him like a punch. It had started on a cold night. The streets were almost empty, and the city lights glowed faintly through the fog. The man was walking home from a late shift at work. His steps echoed in the quiet. Somewhere far away, a siren wailed, then faded. That's when he saw her, the little girl. She was standing on the corner of the street, her face pale under the streetlight. She was shaking, tears rolling down her cheeks. He slowed his steps. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl's head jerked toward him. Her voice was small and broken. "They're coming. Please help me." Something in her tone made him uneasy. He looked around. The street was empty at first. But then he noticed movement in the fog. Shapes, tall, thin figures that didn't move like normal people. Their bodies seemed to flicker, like bad reception on a TV screen. "What the?" he muttered under his breath. The girl's hand shot out, grabbing his. Her skin was cold, but the strange thing was the glowing mark on her wrist. It looked like a tattoo made of light pale blue, pulsing slowly, as if it had a heartbeat. The man swallowed. His mind told him to walk away, but his legs moved forward. He didn't know why, maybe instinct, maybe the way she looked at him. He grabbed her hand tighter. "Come on," he said. "Let's get out of here." They ran. Shoes pounded against the wet pavement. The sound of the shapes moving behind them was wrong. It wasn't footsteps. It was like metal scraping against glass. They turned into a narrow alley. He pressed the girl against the wall and peeked out. The figures stopped at the mouth of the alley. One of them tilted its head, like it was listening. A faint buzzing filled the air, and the man's teeth began to ache from it. The girl squeezed his hand. "Don't move," she whispered. The glowing mark on her wrist flared bright for a second. The creatures froze, then slowly turned away, disappearing back. Into the fog, the man let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. What were they?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "Not from here." Her voice was so certain, so calm now. It sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't ask more questions. Not then. He just wanted to get her somewhere safe. She told him an address, and he took her there. The streets felt strange as they walked, like some buildings were missing, and others were too new, too perfect. But he told himself it was just the fog messing with his head. When they reached the house, it looked old, but not in the normal way. The windows had a shine like glass from another time. The door was carved with symbols he didn't understand. A tall woman answered. She was beautiful, but there was something about her that made his stomach twist. She looked at the girl first, relief flooding her face. Then her eyes met his. For a moment, she didn't say a word. She just studied him like she was looking for something under his skin. "Thank you for bringing her back," she finally said. He nodded, feeling awkward. "No problem." She was lost. The woman smiled faintly. but it wasn't the kind of smile that reached the eyes. She pulled the girl inside, and the door closed quietly. He stood there for a second, wondering why he felt like he had just stepped out of a different world. And now, here she was, that same woman, in his apartment, on her knees begging him. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "You saved her life, our law. It says I must protect you now, and there is only one way to do that." The man's pulse quickened. "By marrying me?" Her eyes locked on his. "Yes, or they will come for you next." The room suddenly felt colder. He could almost hear that same strange buzzing from the night in the alley. Somewhere deep inside, he knew. She wasn't lying. The incident the night had been quiet. Too quiet. A thin layer of fog floated above the streets, curling around the streetlights like ghostly fingers. The man walked with his hands in his pockets, his breath forming pale clouds. In the cold air, he was tired. His mind was still on the work. He had just finished a long, dull shift that made his eyes heavy. He thought about getting home, maybe making instant noodles, and sleeping until noon. But then, he heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the city. It was faint at first, like the soft hum of electricity, but it seemed to echo through the street. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. That's when he saw her. She was standing under a broken streetlight, the bulb above flickering weakly. A little girl. She wore a thin white dress, too light for such a cold night. Her small arms hugged her body, and her eyes darted left and right like she was looking for something. The man slowed his steps. "Hey, are you lost?" he asked. His voice careful. The girl's head turned slowly toward him. For a moment, her eyes seemed to shine not with tears, but with some strange reflection. Like glass catching light. "They're coming," she whispered. "Please help me." Her words were not loud, but they pressed into his chest like a weight. He looked around. The street should have been empty, but through the fog, shapes began to form. Tall, thin silhouettes. Their arms were too long, and their movements, jerky, like marionettes with broken strings. The man felt his heartbeat thump harder. Something deep in his instinct screamed. "Not human. Come here," he said, stepping forward. The girl didn't hesitate. She ran to him, her small hand grabbing his. Her skin was icy, colder than the night air. That's when he noticed. The mark, it wasn't a tattoo. Not really. It was a glowing symbol, bright blue, pulsing like it had its own heartbeat. It was made of lines and curves he couldn't understand, and for some reason, just looking at it made him dizzy. He wanted to ask what it was, but the sound behind them changed. The humming was louder now, mixed with a strange clicking noise. "We have to go," the girl said sharply. Her voice no longer sounded scared, sounded certain. They ran. The street twisted in ways the man didn't remember. Corners led to alleys that seemed to narrow, then suddenly opened two wide streets with buildings he swore hadn't been there before. Behind them, the creatures followed. He could hear their steps not like footsteps, but more like metal scraping on glass. Sometimes they flickered, vanishing for a second before reappearing closer. The girl tugged his hand and turned sharply into a side street. "Not that way," she said, as if she knew the path by heart. They passed a dark shop window, and the man caught their reflection. But it wasn't right. In the glass, he saw himself holding her hand, but behind them, instead of creatures, there was a tall black wall stretching up into the sky, covered with those same glowing blue marks. He blinked, and the wall was gone. Just fog. They reached an old building with a collapsed awning. The girl pulled him inside. The air was colder here, and it smelled faintly of rust. Shelves stood in crooked rows, covered in dust. It might have been a shop once, but now it was just shadows. The man crouched down, trying to catch his breath. Okay, tell me what's going on. Who are they? The girl shook her head. You wouldn't believe me. I just saw something. That isn't supposed to exist, he said, his voice trembling. Try me. She hesitated. They're not from here. They're hunters. They come through the cracks. Cracks. In the world, she said simply. There are doors you can't see. Sometimes they open. Sometimes things come through. The man stared at her, trying to make sense of it. Before he could reply, the sound came again. This time, it was inside the building. From the far end of the store, one of the shapes appeared. Its head was too small for its body, and it tilted unnaturally as it stepped forward. Where its eyes should have been, there were smooth, glowing discs. The man froze. His mouth went dry. The girl stepped in front of him. Stay still, she said. The mark on her wrist began to glow, brighter, so bright it lit up her pale skin. The creature paused, tilting its head like it was, listening to the light. Then it let out a faint, static-like sound, turned, and walked away into the shadows. The man stared. What did you just do? I told it to leave, she said softly. They can hear the mark. You're saying you talked to it? She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed his hand again. We have to go now, before they send more. They slipped out a back door and into a narrow alley. The fog was heavier here, and the humming had faded, but the man's skin still pricked lead. As they walked, he noticed something else. The air smelled different, like rain, but sharper, and the buildings seemed wrong. Some had old wooden signs that looked 100 years out of place, while others had smooth walls without windows, like solid blocks of stone. It was like they were walking through two cities at once. One real and one that didn't belong. Finally, the girl pointed at a small street. This way. Home is close. The man followed, still shaken. His mind tried to deny what he had seen, but the cold mark of her hand in his kept him grounded. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. And he had the terrible feeling. The night had just started. The escape, the man's legs were burning. His lungs felt tight, but he didn't dare slow down. The girl's small hand was still locked in his, guiding him through twisting streets that felt wrong. Some of the buildings they passed looked familiar, brick apartments, little shops with dusty windows. But others looked impossible. One was so tall it seemed to vanish into the fog above, but when he blinked, it was gone. Another looked like it was made entirely of dark glass, with faint shapes moving inside. Shapes that didn't look human. Every time the girl looked over her shoulder, her eyes were sharp and alert. She didn't seem lost at all. She knew where she was going. Who are you? The man asked between breaths. I told you, she said. Not from here. He wanted to ask what that meant, but the sound behind them made him stop. It wasn't footsteps this time. It was like metal wires tightening, twisting. The air grew heavy, and the fog ahead rippled, as if something huge had moved through it. Don't look, she whispered. But of course, he did. Through the shifting mist, he saw one of them. This one was bigger than the other. Its body was a mass of shifting lines, like someone had drawn it in the air with light, but couldn't decide on the shape. Sometimes it looked tall, other times hunched. The only constant were its eyes, two glowing discs, locked on him. It didn't walk. It slid. No sound of feet, just the faint hum of something wrong. The girl pulled hard on his hand, snapping him back to motion. If it touches you, you won't come back, she said. They darted into another alley. This one was narrower, the walls on either side dripping with water that smelled faintly metallic. Above them, a fire escape groaned as if something heavy had just landed on it. The man risked a glance upward. Through the fog, he saw a thin figure crouched there, its head twisting all the way around to face him. He looked away instantly. The girl stopped suddenly in front of a rusted metal door. She pressed her glowing wrist against it. The mark pulsed once, and the door unlocked with a sound like a deep breath. "Inside," she said. They stepped into darkness. The air inside was warm, but not in a comforting way. It was thick, almost heavy. The space smelled faintly sweet, like overripe fruit, and the walls seemed to shimmer slightly, even though there was no light source. The man's eyes adjusted slowly. They were in a narrow passage that curved downward, deeper into the building. Or maybe under it. "What is this place?" he asked. "Ah. Path they can't follow," she said. "Not for long." They walked deeper, the ground soft under their feet, almost like carpet, but uneven. The walls began to glow, faintly soft blue veins of light, spreading like cracks in ice. The man reached out to touch one, but the girl slapped his hand away. "Don't, they can trace touch." He didn't ask who they were anymore. He had seen enough to know that if he wanted to live, he should listen to her, after what felt like minutes. They reached another door. This one was not metal, but wood. Heavy, old, and carved with strange spirals. The girl hesitated before opening it. "Once we go out, they'll find us again. You have to run and not stop, no matter what you see." The man nodded, but his heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. She opened the door. The first thing he noticed was the sky. It was still night, but the stars above were wrong. Too many of them, arranged in patterns he didn't recognize. Some were moving slowly, drifting like they were alive. The street they stepped onto was silent. The buildings here were lower, older, their windows glowing with a faint yellow light. There were no people, or so he thought. Then, in the corner of his vision, he saw movement. Shadows stretching along the walls, but there was nothing there to cast them. The girl pointed. That way, they ran again. The man's legs screamed at him to stop, but fear kept him moving. Every so often, the ground beneath his feet would shift, like stepping on a soft spot in the earth. One time, it wasn't ground at all. It was a hand, pale and long-fingered, retreating into the dirt. He didn't look down again. They reached a small bridge over what looked like a canal. But instead of water, a thick silver mist flowed below. The girl jumped onto the bridge without hesitation, halfway across. The sound came again, the twisting, wire-tightening noise. Now so loud it made his teeth ache. He turned his head just enough to see shapes forming in the mist. Dozens of them. Some had too many arms, others no faces at all. They rose up slowly, as if tasting the air. "Hurry," the girl shouted. They reached the other side, and she slammed her glowing wrist against another door. It opened instantly, inside. They collapsed onto the floor. The man gasped for air, feeling sweat drip down his back. "Why? Why are they after you?" The girl's voice was calm. "Because I'm not supposed to be here. And now, neither are you." He stared at her, realizing she was right. Whatever world he had stepped into, he wasn't getting out easily. And somewhere, far away, the hum began again. The drop-off narrow door shut behind them with a low thud, the kind of sound that didn't echo, it absorbed the noise. Swallowing it into silence, the man leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. The girl stood perfectly still, listening. Her head tilted slightly, like she was waiting for a sound only she could hear. After a moment, she nodded. "They're farther now. We can go." She walked ahead, leading him down a cramped hallway lit by a single swinging bulb. The light flickered irregularly, like it was trying to sync with her glowing wrist, but couldn't quite match the rhythm. The man followed, uneasy. Every time the bulb flickered, the shadows around them seemed to twitch, almost like they were alive. They stepped out onto a quiet street. The air here felt different, heavy, but clean. As if they had stepped into a place, sealed away from the rest of the city. The fog was thinner, yet the sky looked wrong again. Stars shifted slowly above, sliding into new patterns. "This way," she said, pointing to a narrow lane between two old buildings. The man hesitated. "Is this where you live?" She gave a small shrug. "It's home, for now." The lane was paved with cobblestones, but some were missing, replaced by slabs of black glass that reflected nothing, not even their own footsteps. The houses were strange. Some had walls made of uneven brick, others of dark, polished stone carved with swirling marks. None of them had front doors in the usual place. Some doors were high up on the wall, accessible only by ladders that weren't there. He kept glancing. Around it wasn't just the architecture, it was the silence. Even in the late hours of the night, a city should have some sound. Wind, a dog barking, distant traffic. Here, there was only the faint hum of something far away. The girl stopped in front of a house that looked older than the rest. Its roof sagged on one side, and its windows were tall, narrow, and filled with glass that shimmered like oil on water. The front door was covered in carvings, spirals, circles, and lines that seemed to shift if you looked at them too long. "This is it?" she said. Before the man could reply, the door opened. A woman stood there. She was tall, her dark hair falling in loose waves down her back. Her eyes were sharp, almost too sharp, and for a moment, the men thought they reflected light the same way the girl's eyes had earlier. Her gaze went to the child first, and something softened in her face. She crouched, pulling the girl in too. Her arms. "You're safe," she murmured. Then she looked up at him. The man felt as though her stare went straight through him. Not in a threatening way, but in a searching way, as though she were reading something in him that even he didn't. "No was there. You brought her back," she said simply. He nodded awkwardly. "She was lost. Those things were, I know," she interrupted. Her voice was calm, but the way she said it made it clear she understood exactly what he'd seen. For a moment, none of them spoke. The girl clung to her mother's side, her glowing mark fading to a dim pulse. The woman stepped back, opening the door wider. "You should come in." The man hesitated. Part of him wanted to walk away, to forget all of this and return to his normal life. But something about her tone, about the strange, shimmering glass of the windows, made him curious. He stepped. Inside, the air in the house was warm but thick, as though it had been holding the same breath for a long time. The walls were lined with shelves full of objects he didn't recognize, glass spheres that glowed faintly from within, small metal devices with unreadable symbols, jars filled with silver dust. The floor creaked under his weight, but when he looked down, he saw it wasn't wood at all. What was woven from some kind of dark, rope-like material that shifted slightly, like it was alive. The woman walked ahead into a larger room, the girl still holding her hand. On the far wall, there was a tall mirror. But when the man looked into it, the reflection was wrong. He saw himself, yes, but behind him was not the room they were in. It was a street empty, except for three of the tall, thin creatures standing in the fog, unmoving, staring at the mirror as if they could see him too. He looked away quickly. The woman noticed. "They can't come here," she said. "Not yet. Not yet." His voice cracked slightly. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment longer before she spoke. "You've seen them. That means they've seen you. They don't forget faces." The man swallowed. "Why are they after her?" "They're not just after her," the woman said softly. "They're after what she carries." She reached for the girl's wrist, touching the glowing mark. For the briefest moment, the mark flared so bright it lit the whole room in blue. "This is not decoration," she said. "It's a key." And now you've touched it too. The man stepped back, his stomach tightening. A key to what? The woman didn't answer. She simply walked to the door and opened it again, looking out into the empty street. You should leave before they catch your scent, she said. He stood frozen, unsure whether to run or demand answers. But her tone left no room for argument. He stepped outside, the door shut behind him with that same absorbing thud for a long moment. He just stood there, staring at the strange carvings on the door. The street was empty, no sound, no wind, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he was already being watched. The return 3 days passed, 3 days of silence. But not peace. The man had gone back to his apartment, locked every door, pulled every curtain. At night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything those flickering figures in the fog. The humming sound that made his bones ache. The strange house with its shifting glass. He told himself it was over. He had taken the girl home. Her mother had thanked him. He was out of it now, but deep down, he didn't believe it, because sometimes, late at night, he would hear the faint hum again. Not loud enough to be sure, just enough to make him doubt his own mind. It was raining on the third night when it happened. He was eating cold noodles straight from the pot when there was a knock at the door. 3 slow knocks. At first, he thought it was the neighbor. But then he froze because the sound didn't echo like a normal knock. It was muffled, like the door itself had swallowed most of it. He set down the pot, his hands shaking. Another knock. This time, he heard it. A faint, steady hum seeping through the door. When he opened it, she was standing there, the tall woman from that strange house. Her hair was damp from the rain, strands clinging to her face. She wasn't alone. The little girl was beside her, holding her hand. Both of them looked perfectly calm, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to show up at his door in the middle of the night. The man's voice was tight. "What are you doing here?" The woman stepped forward without asking permission. "We need to talk." He moved aside reluctantly, his heart pounding. As soon as they entered, the air in the room seemed heavier, like the space had recognized. Then the girl let go of her mother's hand and wandered toward the window, looking out at the rain. She didn't speak. The woman faced him directly. "They're coming for you now." The man blinked. "What?" Her voice was steady. "You've touched the key. You've seen what you weren't meant to see. They don't allow witnesses." Shook his head. "I don't even know what that thing is." You're not just anything anymore," she cut in. "You're part of this, whether you want to be or not." She stepped closer, and for the first time, he noticed something on her wrist. It was faint, almost hidden by the sleeve of her coat. A glowing mark. Just like the girl's. His stomach dropped. "You have one too." Her expression didn't change. "I was chosen a long time ago. This mark binds me to the laws of my people." "What people?" he asked, his voice shaking. She didn't answer the question. Instead, she said, "One of our laws is clear. If someone saves the life of a marked child, they must be bound to that family. It's the only way to protect them." He stared at her. "Bound how?" Her next words came without hesitation. "Marriage." For a moment, the man thought he had misheard her. "You're saying you want me to marry you? That's insane." "I don't even know you." "It's not about knowing me," she said. "It's about surviving. The hunters won't stop. If we're bound, you'll share my protection. My mark will shield you." His pulse quickened. "And if I say no," her gaze darkened, "then they'll take you. They'll pull you through the cracks. And when they're done, you won't come back." The hum outside grew louder, like it was agreeing with her. The girl left the window and came to stand beside him. Her small fingers tugged at his sleeve. "You helped me," she said quietly. "Please don't go away." He looked down at her. Her eyes were wide and strange innocent, but with something old behind them. Something that didn't belong to a child. The woman stepped closer. "I am not asking you for romance," she said. "I am offering you a choice. Live under my protection, or vanish." The rain outside turned to a sharp, metallic sound, as if it was striking not water, but glass. The man glanced at the window. That's when he saw them. 3 tall shapes in the street below. They weren't moving. They just stood there. Heads tilted up toward his window. He felt his knees weaken. "They've found me." The woman's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. Her mark began to glow, and a faint blue light spread into his skin. "They can't take you if you're bound," she said. "But the longer you wait, the closer they get." The girl's voice was barely a whisper. "They're almost at the door." The man's mind raced. It was absurd. It was impossible. And yet, the humming in the air was now so loud it rattled the cups on his kitchen counter. He could feel them, just on the other side of the walls. The woman looked into his eyes. "Say yes, now." A deep vibration shook the apartment, and the front door shuddered as if something heavy had pressed against it. From the other side, the man's breath caught in his throat. Somewhere in his chest, survival screamed louder than reason. Yes. The moment he said it, the glow on her wrist flared, and the blue light wrapped fully around his own. The humming outside cut off instantly. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. The woman released him slowly. "It's done." But the man had this sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. The blue light around his wrist faded slowly, sinking beneath the skin like water soaking into sand. The man stood frozen, staring at it. His skin looked normal again. But deep down, he felt something different, odd. Quiet pulse that wasn't his heartbeat. It was slower, deeper, older. The woman stepped back, her expression unreadable. "Now they cannot take you. As long as the bond holds." The man's voice cracked. "Bond? What does that even mean?" "I just said yes because they were outside. My door." She tilted her head slightly. "Words have weight in our law. You gave consent." The binding began. He laughed nervously. "Okay, look. If this is some kind of alien marriage ceremony, or whatever it is," she interrupted plainly. The words hit him like cold water. She continued, "The moment you agreed, your name, your shape, your existence was written into my line. You are part of my family. Now, you will be under my shield." But, her voice lowered, "You are also under my law." The man's stomach nodded. "What law?" The girl had gone back to the window, but her voice floated across the room. "The one that says nothing is free." The man turned to her. "What's that supposed to mean?" The woman answered. "Protection is not given without cost. The hunters will leave you alone, but in return, you must stand where I stand. You will see what I see. You will fight when I fight." He took a step back. "I'm not a fighter." "Neither was I," she said calmly. Until the day came. The hum outside was gone, but the silence that replaced it felt unnatural, like the pause before a storm. The man glanced at the door, half expecting it to shudder again. He rubbed his wrist. "Can't we undo this? Break the bond?" The woman's gaze sharpened. "If you try, the hunters will smell it. They'll come for you, and I will not be able to stop them." The girl turned from the window, her small face serious. "And? They don't just take you, they take your shadow, your voice, your name. When they're done, no one remembers you were ever here." A chill crawled down his spine. "That's not possible." The girl tilted her head. "Neither is walking through a door that moves you to a street you've never seen. But you did that too." The woman crossed the room and placed something. On his table, a small, curved piece of black glass, no bigger than a coin. It was etched with faint blue lines. "This is yours now," she said. "Keep it with you at all times. It will open doors in our world. Some doors will take you to safety. Others," she paused, "will not." The man stared at it, reluctant to touch it. "So this is my wedding ring." Her lips curved faintly. "In a way. It marks you to others like me. It will tell them you are bound. Some will help you. Others may test you." He picked it up. The moment his fingers closed around it, the lines on it lit up, matching the faint pulse in his wrist. For a moment, he felt dizzy like the floor had tilted slightly beneath him. He set it down quickly. "Nope, not doing this." "You already are," she said. The girl suddenly tensed, her gaze fixed outside the window again. "They're close," she whispered. The man's heart jumped. "You said they couldn't take me now." "They can't," the woman replied. "But they may want to see you. They will test the bond. They will see if you are worth keeping." Keeping. His voice rose. She looked at him with that same calm expression. "You think this is a rescue? It is not. It is an exchange. I keep you alive, and in return, you stand beside me when the time comes. Until then, you will learn our ways." The man shook his head. "I didn't sign up for. You did," she cut in. "The moment you said yes." The girl stepped away from the window. "We should leave before they knock." The man felt his chest tighten. "Leave? To where?" The woman picked up the coin of black glass and pressed it into his palm. "Home," she said. "Your new one." Before he could argue, she led him to the door. The rain outside had stopped, but the street looked different, shadows deeper, corners sharper. The air smelled faintly metallic, like the moment before lightning strikes. He hesitated on the threshold. "If I go with you, that's it. I can't come back." "You could," she said softly, "but you wouldn't want to." The girl looked up at him, her eyes glimmering. "It's safer there, and you belong now." He stepped outside, the black glass coin warm in his hand. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the street, he thought he saw movement, tall shapes watching from the edge of the fog. But they didn't move closer. For now, the choice man stepped into the street, the black glass coin burning faintly in his palm. The air outside felt wrong, not warmer, but heavier, as if the world had gained weight in the time it took to open the door. The woman stood beside him, calm as ever. The little girl clung to her mother's coat, her gaze fixed far. Down the road, they're watching. The girl whispered. The man followed her eyes at the far end of the street. Just before the fog swallowed everything, 3 tall shapes stood in perfect stillness. Their limbs were too long, bending in ways the human body couldn't. Their heads tilted slightly, as if listening not to sound, but to the beat of his heart. "Why aren't they moving?" the man asked. "They're waiting," the woman replied. "They want to see if you'll follow me willingly. If you refuse, they'll take you instead." His grip on the coin tightened. "And if I follow you?" Her eyes met his. "Den. You belong to my world. And once you cross the threshold, there is no return, not without cost you can't imagine." The man swallowed hard. "I didn't ask for this." "No one does," she said quietly. "But you were chosen the moment you touched her hand." The little girl glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "They already know you're sent. You can't go back to your old life. They'd find you in your bed, in your dreams, in your shadow." The man took a step back toward his apartment door, but when he turned, he froze. The building behind him was gone. In its place stood a wall smooth, black, and impossibly tall, stretching up until it vanished into the night sky. The surface was covered in glowing blue marks, shifting like water. "What's this?" His voice trembled. The barrier, the woman said. Once they touch your name, your old door disappears. There is only forward. A deep hum rolled through the street. The hunters at the far end took a single, unified step forward. The ground beneath his feet trembled faintly. The woman turned. To him, you choose now. With me or with them. The man looked between her and the hunters, panic rising in his chest. What happens if I pick them? They'll take you through a crack, the girl said softly. On the other side, you'll forget everything: your name, your face, even the sound of your own voice. You'll still exist, but not here. Not anywhere you'd want to be. The hunters took another step forward. This time, they were closer than they should have been, as if distance meant nothing to them. The man's pulse pounded in his ears. If I go with you, what happens to me? The woman's gaze didn't waver. You'll learn to walk the hidden paths. You'll carry the key. You'll stand against the ones who hunt us. And when the time comes, you'll owe the fight your life. That sounds like dying, he muttered. It's not dying, she said. It's becoming something else. The hum grew louder, rattling in his bones now. The little girl stepped forward, holding out her small hand to him. Her mark pulsed faintly. You saved me, she said. Don't let them unmake you. For a moment, he just stared at her hand. Behind her, the woman waited, still and steady. Behind them, the street seemed to stretch into a tunnel of shadow, twisting slightly, as if leading somewhere that wasn't the city at all. The man's mind screamed for logic. For sense but sense had left the moment the world had bent in front of him. The hunters were halfway down the street now. Their movements were wrong, like skipping frames in a broken video. Flickering closer each time he blinked, the man's breath came fast. If I go with you, can I ever go home? The woman's eyes softened just enough to show the truth. Not as you are now. The hum spiked. The hunters tilted their heads in unison, and for the first time he saw their faces, or what passed for faces. Smooth, featureless planes of light. No eyes, no mouth. Just an endless, shifting glow. They were close enough now that the air between them seemed to ripple. The little girl's hand trembled slightly. Please. The man looked down at the coin in his palm. The lines on it began to glow brighter, syncing perfectly with the faint thump under his skin where the bond had taken root. He closed his fingers around it. The hunter stopped moving. The woman stepped toward the shadowed street behind her. Then, stepped forward. He hesitated only once, long enough to glance back at where his apartment had been. The black wall loomed silently, its glowing marks shifting like they were watching him. Then he stepped toward her. The moment his foot crossed the shadowed line in the road, the world shifted. The street behind him, Hunter's wall, and all folded in on itself like paper burning in reverse, curling into darkness. The air ahead was different, thicker, but alive, filled with whispers in a language he didn't know, but somehow understood. The woman turned to him. Welcome to your new home. And somewhere far beyond the barrier they had left, the hunters tilted their heads and smiled without mouths. The bond had been sealed. The game had only begun.